Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I interview top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And it is my honor to introduce today's guest, which is Pepe Marais. Hi, Pepe.
Hi, Adi.
Very good to have you here on the podcast. And you are coming to us here from all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa, which is awesome because I love interviewing people from all over the world, because it just shows that, it is a small world and we all face similar situations, similar stories, and it's good to hear experiences from different places. So definitely thank you for being here. And I want to also thank Lisa from Whale, which Whale is a platform that we use in order to document processes and procedures. So it's usewhale.io. So a big shout out to Whale and to Lisa, who introduced us. You were a guest on their podcast, and I just wrote also a blog for them about the 3 biggest barriers to actually get started on a process documentation project. So we'll include all of that in our show notes. But now let's talk about you. So I'm very excited to have our conversation today because you are a very successful entrepreneur. But you definitely, you had your way, your path to actually get to where you're at, which you right now have a very successful marketing agency in South Africa. I would say it probably ranks as the number 1 in terms of a South African firm by itself, right? And we're going to talk about your journey, and we're going to talk about the role of processes and procedures in that journey, especially being a creative, and how do you see having processes as part of your success? Like you told me before the show, you have a process for everything. You run your life by a process, which I always love to have those discussions. But first, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, give us a little bit of your background and your story in a nutshell in terms of like how you got to where you are right now.
Great. Thanks, Adi. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. To speak to international audience is always amazing. Coming from South Africa, which on a map feels so far away from the rest of the Western world. It's like in the middle of the West and the East. So just in a nutshell, I come from an art background. I did an art diploma. In fact, I was very insecure as a youngster because we so measured at school and I wasn't very academic. So I turned out to be a bit of a donkey. When you get a D, you're called a donkey. Very good at maths though, and very good at music. And I fell into art by chance. And in my late night, I was 20 years of age when I fell into art at the art school, and turned out to be really latently talented at it. And it grew my confidence to such a level that I really believed I can have my own business before the age of 30. Because I found something that I was really passionate about. And with that in mind, again, when I was studying, I didn't even know what advertising was because it's such a small niche sector in any country. People don't always think, well, let's get into advertising, although we consume so much of it. So I then got into advertising by chance as a rendering artist, drawing storyboards back in the days. That was before even we had a computer in South Africa. I think the Apple Mac got to South Africa in about 1992, 93, and I started in 1990. And from there, really did well for my first 6 years in advertising. And then at the age of 29, we had this idea to start a takeaway advertising agency that's based on a restaurant model with rare, medium, and well-done ideas. And the idea excited me so much, I gave up my job and teamed up with a partner, and we started this business called Joe Public in 1998. And yeah, so that was sort of the infancy, and based on a beautiful idea that was never seen at that stage in our world, in terms of basing the system, talking to systems of advertising on that of a takeaway restaurant was quite revolutionary. And it excited us enough to give up our day jobs and our salaries and just start something from scratch. And thankfully almost premature. I mean, I know a lot of tech startups, and you have jobs that started at like early 20s, but those are the outliers. I mean, normally, you don't normally like throw yourself at an idea to this level, right, and then just went on this massive 25-year journey of more internal growth than even financial growth. I can tell you that much.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about your journey. So, but what is the end product? What do you have right now? Tell us about your company at present time.
So fascinating. The end product, which almost feels like the beginning product, because I always relate business more to the growth of human beings. I believe businesses are business beings, not just businesses. They've got a spirit within them. And when I look at a business like that, I almost follow the growth trajectory of a human. 25 years of age is quite young in someone's career. We normally start flexing our muscle at 40, and we really start maturing and adding value at 50. So when I look at our business as a 25-year-old, it really feels like it's beginning, but it's a substantial business now. It's more of a traditional full-service advertising group. We offer media solutions for our clients, PR solutions, but we make in the communication space anything from websites to social campaigns to traditional television films, which is still my favorite thing to make, is film, because it's such a beautiful emotional way of connecting with people, film, because it's got all the senses within one form of communication. So very diverse content. We've got a content studio. We do animation. So everything to do with comms we now do at a very high level. So we work mainly with blue chips, big brands. We don't do small brands anymore. And we 300 people, 3 offices in South Africa, but we've also got 2 partner agencies in Amsterdam and Antwerp in Europe. And those 2 operate off the takeaway advertising model, which we also now reintroducing back into our market in the next month. So it almost feels like a full circle 25 years after inception.
Right. So what is it? Tell me more about the takeaway model. What is that?
The takeaway model was to find a way to deal with process and simplify it. Because what's happened over all these years, I would definitely say over the past 20 years, the bottom line sort of financial return on advertising has become more important than actually product in our market. So people start obsessing much more over how much money can I make as to how much value can I add. And the takeaway model was trying to find a way back then to deliver high-end output. We always said haute cuisine takeaway. So how can we do high-end creative product in the communication space at a more efficient, in a more efficient way? And because of that, there's a cost saving. And in the beginning, because it was a startup starting with very small clients, it almost turned out a little bit more like a takeaway joint with cheap, unhealthy food. And then that sort of harmed the intention initially, which is why we moved away from it. But what we're relaunching now, and the way we're operating out of those other 2 markets, is that it's really high-end advertising at a lower cost because it's more efficient in the way we work.
I see. Okay, so it gets your product or services more available for people.
Yeah, well, I would say I'll give you an example. If the process of advertising at the moment, and I'll speak for our market, I'm not first on the UK or the US market in terms of systematically how the process works, but from brief. So when clients come in with a brief for a new product campaign to market, can sometimes take 6 to 9 months. or even 12 months, because the process has become so slow. You get a strategic process that's got multiple rounds and inputs, and then from there you go into a creative process that's got multiple rounds and inputs, and then you go into research. And I always think, Steve Jobs, he said if we researched the Apple phone, we would never have the Apple phone, because people wouldn't be able to comprehend one button, and now no button on the phone. So there's all these processes that's built in over the years have been built into the advertising process. Whereas the takeaway, we always say to our clients, do you want it the normal way or the takeaway? The takeaway process is much more simple. So we really condense the strategic process. We do not do reverts. We come with our solution and we hope that it's a good enough solution. Well, if the client doesn't like it, then they move on. But if they like it, we go into production. And when we go into production, there's total freedom for us to manage the creative product. And we find that when we work like that, we deliver a better output in a shorter time. And because it's a shorter time, it's a cheaper cost, because the advertising agency model now charges by the hour, like lawyers.
Right. So you basically charge by the product. You give them a specific product, a specific service, and they go for it. So how much time are you able to save by doing that?
I was literally, before our interview now, I was speaking to my founding partner, and we are sitting with one of our big clients on a major project that kickstarted last September, November. It's about 9 months ago. We will only be in market in August, and that's on the normal way, and it will be a beautiful piece of work. But on the takeaway, we've done 4 equally substantial products for another client in the same time. So
without compromising the quality of the product, right?
I would almost say the quality is even better because of the freedom and the trust. So 4 times more efficient based on that.
It's very interesting, because yesterday I had a conversation with a client, and they one of the things that they mentioned, they're not a marketing agency, but they still deal with people and are a service industry. And they were really trying to figure out how to make their process more efficient. And the time that they spend the most is the back and forth with a client. And we help many creative agencies and marketing agencies create their processes and procedures. And that is a big bottleneck, is like that back and forth and waiting for the client to respond, etc. So what would be your recommendation for businesses that are trying to get more efficient in that area, in terms of moving away from the hourly model or the model of, because of the interaction? I don't want to say the interaction with the client, because you do, me as a client, I do want interaction and I do want to be consulted with, but and then I'm going to let you answer, but I just thought about it. Like this morning, I was thinking, we're looking at, for instance, remodeling one of the bathrooms here, right? So, but I thought, okay, well, I can go back and forth and do it, but I just want to hire an interior designer that I fully trust, have them just show me some things. Maybe I can tell them the colors, or they can give me some idea of, or some suggestions, and then I can say yes, 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 and then go, and then I don't have to be involved, because it just saves me time and we get it done so much faster, right? So it might not be the greatest analogy, but it's something like that in terms of me being the client. I'm hiring an expert, so you take it away from me and just, you become like a trusted partner, right? As opposed to somebody that I then have to monitor or also run.
I think it's a good analogy. And I think at the heart of this is lack of trust. And I think that lack of trust, we created as advertising agencies. We created it. And we created it in the way that it happened. And I don't think we consciously did it, but globalization definitely played a part. Because once you sell your business, because if you own your business, you're in service of your clients. So you're really in service of someone, you're giving a value to someone else. When you sell your business and you've got international shareholders, your new boss almost becomes your international shareholder. So there's a conflict of interest, because now it becomes more important to give a return on investment to your shareholder overseas almost more important than giving your best value to your client. So there's a split in focus. And when there's a split in focus, you're half your chance of success. And that's been my experience, because for 8 years we were part of an international, and now I'm not shunning the international model and globalization at all, but I'm saying if you could do that model that collectively still focuses on adding value to your clients, then I think there would have been a higher level of trust. Because of this sense that, well, you only want to make as much money out of me no matter what, there's no trust, so I can't really entrust you. So I do think we've done it to ourselves, but I agree with you. A much, much healthier way is to say, well, you're the expert, I'm paying you a lot of money, do what you believe is right. And I trust you with that. And then it flows a lot faster.
I agree. I think it's brilliant. Now let's talk about my favorite subject, which is processes. And I know that, you use a lot of processes. You are a very, very process-oriented person and at the same time creative. You remind me a lot of me. Like you said, you're very good at math. I'm very good at math. I even used to teach math as an instructor in different colleges in Portland. And that's my background is industrial engineering. That's why I'm into processes. But I'm also very, I have very artistic and very creative. I'm definitely creative, and I love that combination. And I think each one of us is very creative because we are creating whatever we are creating. Even a dentist, when they create, when they put a crown and they put an implant or whatever, it's kind of like they're creating something. Whatever job you're doing, if you put a create and you put the beauty in it, it definitely has creativity to it, but it doesn't mean that we don't need processes. So we're going to talk about processes and how you build your business. But before I was going to ask you that question, you told me the story that in 2008, during the recession, you actually filed for bankruptcy. And you had to restart a business, and now you have a super successful business. So how did you do that?
So just to be clear, we didn't technically in the end file for bankruptcy, but we turned in the end. So it was interesting. We bought our business back, I think it was the 26th of February 2009. So we managed to buy ourselves back. The business was so devalued because it was going backwards. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about value first and money follows value. Because we were for 8 years desperately trying to pay our shareholders what they wanted, took our eye completely off the value that we should be offering to our clients, and the business declined. And eventually it was just worth nothing, so they sold it back to us. But we were in the middle of that 2009 recession, a global recession, and a few of our key clients couldn't afford to pay. It was the first thing you cut as a marketer or as a brand is your advertising spend when times are tough.
Which is a number one mistake in businesses make.
Often, but I suppose when you have to change.
But it is, because when times are tough, the last thing that you want to do is go and cut your communication outwards and your advertising.
Absolutely. That would be the rule, but I can also, I can empathize with it, knowing that if I have to choose between people's jobs and advertising, because those are the two big costs, your salary cost and your advertising cost in big business. Be it as it may, our income dried up and we ran out of cash. And literally in May 2009, so by June we couldn't pay salaries. And we had an opportunity, interesting, USAID, United States AID, had a big project in South Africa for AIDS. And we pitched on it and we won that piece of business, and that actually saved our business. So it was a restart. We were down to very few people. And I do think if you speak about systems, that was the birth of actually figuring out a greater purpose for our business beyond money, because we had such a visceral experience with chasing money and not making money, that we had to figure out what are we chasing here. And I think it profoundly, all our systems that we built within the business is actually based on the purpose of the business. So before we even speak systems, that at the heart of our systematic approach to growth is actually the purpose of our business, which we only found because the business broke down so we could break through. It's a fascinating concept as humans that we have to run into a brick wall before we consider changing our way of being.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, sometimes, you need to experience that in order to get through that. So absolutely. Okay. So now you start building the business in a different way. So first of all, you were basing it on service first, and then the profit obviously came. But what role did systems have in building that business?
So if I think the systems that we run in our business, obviously process, just the general process and the administrative process of running a campaign through an agency that links to tech, that allows us to actually track, because we are still time-based. We'd love our clients to pay us for our thinking, but we are still time-based. So at the heart of our business, we run a system called Workbook that actually runs the process from brief to final production. So that's a systemized process. Obviously, if you look at the payment side of the business, that's systemized. But one of the systems that we built ourselves, so the purpose of our business is to serve the growth of our people, our clients, and our country. And that purpose, that's almost the heart of our strategy. And based on that strategy, we had to build a system that actually tracks the growth of each person within our business. So right now we can pull data that tells us based on various inputs where each one of our 300 people in our business actually sits in terms of their personal growth. Wow. We're also tracking systematically the growth of our product, and we measure our product, and we measure the caliber of our product. And there's internal ways of measuring it, and our industry is very not driven, but it's got a award system. Like the film industry's got the Oscars, the creative advertising industry's got various award shows, and that gives you the data to see where your work actually gets ranked by its peers. It's not always foolproof, but we use that as external measure. So we've got a system that measures our product. We built Growth Tracker to track the growth of our clients in terms of just their sales, very simple. And then in the end, we tried to find a mean growth score for our business across all those growth pillars. So we just don't go, we grew 20% financially, so now we're amazing business. You might have unhappy people in your business. You might have a terrible product. And then you suddenly think you've got a great business because you only systematically track your bottom line. Mm-hmm. And all your financial measures. So those are the various systems in the business at the moment. And I think what systems do, because people always think it's a way of measuring, and when you measure, you don't ever feel good enough because it's a way of whipping you, but it's actually not. I think systems gives you consciousness of where you're at. You've got more clarity on what is your input versus your output. So it gives you a high level of consciousness. Otherwise, you're having debates just with, you're hypothesizing. You're sucking things out of your thumb and you're not even clear of exactly where you are. And that is why I love systems so much, just for the sake of consciousness. So I know that I'm moving forward, and I can see when I'm moving backwards that maybe I'm putting the wrong inputs in. And I find systems very liberating because of that.
Absolutely. So basically, processes gives you a roadmap that you know where to follow, but it also gives it to your employees, right? Because they're very clear on what they need to do and in what direction do they have to go.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you another system, the system and process, because you see, the thing is, and as an artist, I'll speak now, we think that systems and process takes away our freedom. But in the absence of, and now of course I'm biased because it's my way of being, maybe someone else will have an opposing view and that's fine. But for me, because of systems and process, I actually create less anxiety for myself. So I actually create more freedom than in the absence of. And I always, when people question me on it, and they're like, "But you're such a creative guy, but you're so processed and systemized. There's something wrong." And I'm okay. Let's look at this. If you take any sport, if you take American football, or if you take South African rugby or soccer, there's 4 lines that define the playing field, and there are rules. But or basketball, American basketball. But you're going to look at the flair and the creativity of the player within the confinement of those rules. And that metaphor, to me, shows me actually a higher level of creativity, and it's almost like liberating, because in the absence of it, you don't have the game. So I very, I'm not a dogmatic person, but I do follow what works for me well. And I do find that systems take away anxiety, and it gives clarity, and it gives enough space to be super creative because of it.
I love it. I think it's spot on. What would you say to a business owner and entrepreneur that says, well, I don't have time to invest. I don't have the time to invest or the resources in creating systems for my business. What would you say to that person?
So now I must first maybe just, because when you ask that, I feel compelled, because I'm sitting and I'm going, why am I so feisty pro about systems? I think your system has to be based on meaning first. I think a system in the absence of a greater meaning might be a little bit meaningless potentially. And I do think if I was to start a business right now, before I would even start my business, I would work very hard to figure out what's the purpose of my business beyond profit, and even beyond my product. And what's the kind of culture that I want in my business, and what are the values I want in my business? Because I think the purpose definition of a business plus its value set gives you the most incredible tools to create a system out of. And I think that system, and I'm not just speaking out of experience, because once we defined the purpose of our business, which only happened 11 years after founding our business, I think if we started our business based on this principle, we could have been so much further now. But it doesn't matter, because we believe it so much more because we saw the change. Before that, we were quite a loose business. We had some structures, some processes, but not as firm as now. Post facing bankruptcy, we've introduced purpose into the business, and it gave us the framework to design all our systems on. So now each of these systems feel like they serve a higher purpose. So I would still say to any entrepreneur, guaranteed, I'm actually doing my doctorate on it now. So trust me, soon I'll be a doctor. And I'm saying that sort of lightly. I'm not someone who thinks that when you've got degrees, you're necessarily more clever. But I am doing a lot of research on the topic. And I do believe if you want to build a sustainable, profound business, if you can start with purpose, values, build a culture on that, and create all your systems out of that, I think you might have something special.
I agree. How long did it take you to actually implement all those processes, create the processes and implement processes in the business?
It's constantly in flux. The world is changing so fast that it's constantly evolving. For example, and even at our scale, which is actually a medium enterprise, I mean, some of our clients employ 30,000 people, we only 300. So it's actually a medium-sized business. So it's constantly in flux. One of our systems, like just our performance management, it's a typical KPI, but it's based on growing people without measurement. That used to be almost archaic, using like Excel spreadsheets. We've just finished building our own tech system around it. And now even with that going live, it's already gone live with everyone's inputs, everyone working with it. In the next year, we'll probably have to update it. So I suppose it's exactly like technology. It evolves all the time. But yeah, that's why I think in my mind, you definitely need like a strategic direction behind your systems. I don't think it's just let's build a system for system's sake. There needs to be a purpose.
Absolutely. That is for sure. And as you said, it is an evolving thing, is a thing that is a living, breathing thing to get all the systems under control and the processes and continue to evolve them. So it is, from what I'm hearing from you, it's not something that, of course, the project is not done, but I would assume that in order for you to get to the processes that you have today, it was an endeavor of continual endeavor by several people in the organization.
Absolutely. And even now, I mean, because systems in this world we live in, they 100% technologically based. All systems are tech. So when you live in the tech world, we end up having a tech department that services us, So within the business, we've got a whole department now that's full-time work on consistently finding better ways of doing, and even now with how the world is changing, the way we work, this integrated way of working between work from home and work from work, it's all changing. So, and that forces us to change some of our systems. So, and I think it's not going to stop. The only constant, it seems at the moment, is change. So best we just get used to it. And yes, once you're at the scale, you do need the resource. But again, I wouldn't get overwhelmed by it, because you can design very simple, even as archaic as it sounds, paper trail systems if you don't have the capital to build tech systems yet. Because, and I mean, if I just look at how I run my life, it is off my iPad, but it is an Excel spreadsheet, very fluid little system that I've designed to run my personal output and input over my entire life. So again, I wouldn't say to any startup, because people do tend to go, well, I don't have the money. Rather find the intention, because the intention finds the money. That's why I always go back to purpose. If you find the purpose and excites you, you go. If you have a beauty salon and you think, and you dream of having a chain of beauty salons, and you might think, I'm just in the world to polish nails and do makeovers, you're wrong. You might be in this world to sell self-confidence, because people that come into your shop had maybe a bad day at work with a boss shouting at him or her, and they just want to pamper and feel like $1 million leaving your salon.
Absolutely.
Self-confidence. Now, if I'm building a system around self-confidence, that sounds exciting. I'm going like, I'll be excited to do that.
It for sure does. Well, I absolutely agree with you. I think the purpose is definitely what drives us. And I'm really happy that you brought it up in terms of the systems would follow it and create. When I start a project about creating systems, it's always like I ask the why. Like, what is even your purpose of creating processes? Why? And somebody asked me yesterday, well, is the output going to be the different? And I thought about it, because, one might think that, when I create a process for a company, it will be the same regardless of the why. But there are the simple little nuances that are different, because if somebody's purpose is to onboard another 5 staff members, I will really have that in mind. So when I'm creating it, I'm envisioning the final product of something that we can onboard people very easily. If the purpose is to create consistency, then I will have that in mind, and that will drive the project. It might look similar, but the purpose really drives it. So I can totally understand what you're talking about, and that makes total sense.
Yeah. And also that layer of consciousness, because we live in a world of so much fake news. It's fascinating.
It is.
And we tend to take 5% and make it 95%. Just, in the social world, and I see it in conversations and dinner talks, and you hear just one little tweet somewhere and you bring it onto a table in a conversation, and everyone's like, what? And the next moment there's this huge furore over like something that might not even exist. And that's why, I'm not often, magnificent things are born out of chaos. But I still think more organized chaos is more constructive and probably will yield a better result. And systems, to me, organizes the chaos to a degree. you're never going to take the chaos of life away, because we're human beings. You can't systemize a human being.
Absolutely. That's a conversation, because you are right. I mean, we need to use technology for our advantage and not be because then we become the slaves of technology, become lazy, absolutely. So I agree with you. And I think this has been a wonderful conversation about much more than just systematizing a business, but having a higher purpose, following your purpose, having that vision, knowing where you're going, servicing, and then everything else will follow, but you do need to follow it with processes, etc. So Pepe, if people want to find more about you, they want to ask you questions, they want to look at your website, they want to find more about your company, where should they go?
It seems nowadays Google finds you no matter where you are in the world. So if you Google Pepe Marais, you'll get quite a lot of me. And if you Google Joe Public, it seems we're starting to make inroads internationally. We're building a bit of a brand name out of South Africa, so you'll find it quite easily. And I'm on LinkedIn, and that's my platform of choice. Gives my age away, but it is my platform of choice because it's such a positive platform. So if you ever want to connect with me, link with me on LinkedIn, and we can communicate from there.
Awesome. Fantastic. I'm on LinkedIn. That's my platform of choice as well. So absolutely. Well, Pepe, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast.
Thanks, Adi. Thank you so much, and all the best to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.